Space was always a challenging and an ever interesting place where one can see the curvature of Earth, infinite boundaries of the universe, planets, and stars, and experience zero gravity. But till now, only a selected few people has been able to visit space. But now it's changing. Everyone has access to space now. So, what is space tourism? Space tourism is the human space travel for entertainment by paying a fee. So, how do this differ from astronauts? See, here I will show you three important figures who had defined the space travel. I think all of you can identify them. So, the first one is Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. In the middle, you see Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman who has gone to space. And on the right, you see Rakesh Sharma, the first Indian who had gone into space. Till now, around 700 people have traveled to space, but most of those were set of select individuals, usually from Air Force or Army, or have been specialists of a particular area. When we talk about space tourism, it all started with Dennis Tito, an American engineer and an entrepreneur. He was the person who gave life to space tourism. And on April 30th, 2001, at the age of 60, he realized his dream of going to space. For this, he paid 20 million US dollars for his visit to International Space Station. Anosh Ansari, an engineer and a successful entrepreneur, was the first woman to visit space as a tourist and traveled to International Space Station and stayed there for 10 days. She is still the only female tourist who paid for her own space trip. Generally, there are three types of space tourism you can purchase. They are orbital, suborbital, and lunar. When we talk about orbital space tourism, the tourist will be experiencing a lot more than just a weightlessness. Orbital space trips lasts based on the number of days a person wants to stay in the orbit. It generally can last somewhere between few days to a few weeks. An orbital space tourist can see the day-night variation of Earth, go for a spacewalk, have space food, and much more. The suborbital flights do not orbit the Earth and are primarily parabolic flights that ascend up to the point of maximum altitude, and from that point a descent phase starts. Yuri Gagarin's record setting first space flight was a suborbital flight of Vostok capsule. When we talk about lunar space tourism, as the name suggests, it involves traveling to the moon. Till date, only 12 people have visited the moon, but with renewed interest, lunar space tourism is getting ready to enter into mainstream, and it aims to provide the view of moon as close as possible. SpaceX is developing Starship, which is aiming to take people around moon, and it's called Dear Moon mission. So, how do we go to space? We travel to space on a rocket. But there is a difference between rockets that take satellites to space and the rocket which takes humans to space. Firstly, they are human rated, or there is a special check in place to ensure that it has highest degree of safety. Apart from that, unlike satellites, we sit inside a pressurized vessel, and inside this we have all the spacecraft controls and essential things like life support system, seats, etc. There are two major designs for this spacecraft that take humans into space. One is the space capsule. The first ever man to travel in space was in a space capsule. A space capsule has two parts. One is the crew module where the astronaut sits when they travel to space and return to Earth. It also contains the heat shield to protect the capsule during re-entry or during return to Earth. And the other is the service module. that has all the necessary parts which are to be used while in space, like fuel, oxygen tanks, propulsion systems, solar panels, etc. The service module is jettisoned just before the capsule makes its way back to Earth. Presently, there are multiple private companies that are making capsules to take people to space. We'll talk about this later. Another type of spacecraft that can take people to space is a space plane or a winged body spacecraft. The winged body spacecraft is a hybrid version of rocket and aircraft. The space shuttle developed by NASA was the first wing bodied spacecraft used for space travel. Later, Scaled Composites developed the first private reusable spaceship, that is the Spaceship One. One of the major advantages of space planes is that it can be reused and can land on a runway like a plane. India is also developing a reusable spacecraft for venturing space at low cost. ISRO's RLVTD and DRDO's Avatar are future next generation Indian reusable spacecraft. Now you must be thinking, how do I become a space tourist? What is the requirement? Can I also go to space? In short, yes. You may need a lot of money right now, but in a few years, the cost would become affordable like how airplane travel is now. That everyone who wants to go to space would be able to travel to space. So, when we talk about the difference between astronauts and space tourists, the main difference between an astronaut and a space tourist is that an astronaut is a specialized person who undergoes intense training to handle the physical and mental pressure during space flight and is skilled to tackle the problem in space accordingly. And the main thing is that they are people who work for the benefit of every country. Whereas a commercial space tourist is just trained partially to adjust to the spaceflight conditions and are there for mainly leisure or recreational purpose. So when a person is qualified as an astronaut, they get an astronaut badge. It can be an army astronaut, senior army astronaut, or a master army astronaut. But a space tourist gets a commercial astronaut or commercial space tourist badge. There are three major players who are actually into the space tourism. They are Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, and SpaceX. So, when we talk about Virgin Galactic, it is an American spaceflight company founded by Richard Branson. Virgin Galactic uses Spaceship Two to take people into the edge of space. Spaceship to follow suborbital trajectory, and Spaceship 2 is taken to an altitude of around 16 kilometers. And once it reaches the height, it is dropped from the mothership. That is the White Knight 2, after which it is propelled with its own rocket engine. Virgin Galactic provides suborbital flight and has enough space for 8 people, out of which 2 are for the pilot and crew and 6 for the passengers. Virgin Galactic's first fully crewed flight was made on 11th July 2021 in VSS Unity 22 spacecraft. In the image, you can see the founder of Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson, on the right before the first flight. The Blue Origin uses a capsule designed for suborbital spaceflight. The crew capsule is carried by a new Shepard launch vehicle, a reusable vertical takeoff and vertical landing crew-rated launch vehicle with enormous windows in space compared to other suborbital vehicles. The new Shepard launch vehicles was named after Alan Shepard, the first American to go into space. The first crewed New Shepard mission, NS-16 flight, was on 20th July 2021. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin, you can see on the right, Oliver Damon and Wally Funk were the 2 other tourists. Oliver Damon was the first 21st century born person to go into the space. He was only 18 years when he made his space flight, making him the youngest person to visit space. And Wally Flunk, aged 82, was the oldest person to visit space. However, this record was broken by William Shatter, who traveled to the space at the age of 90. However, Wally Flunk still holds the record as the oldest woman in space. Sorry. SpaceX is one of the rapidly growing space companies in the world. It aims the development of disruptive technology which paved the path for commercial exploitation of space in a revolutionary way by building or developing the first reusable orbital launch vehicle, a first stage rocket capable of landing back after the launch. SpaceX partnered with a company called Space Adventure in sending 4 private citizens to space on a mission Inspiration 4, which was unique because it ventured into orbital tourism. SpaceX Dragon flew to an orbital altitude of 585 kilometers above ISS orbit on September 15, 2021, which lasted for 3 days in a low Earth orbit. Now you must be thinking how much it costs to go into space. So if we are going for a suborbital space flight, Virgin Galactic charges around 3.4 crore rupees, whereas Blue Origin charges around 1.9 crore rupees. But the orbital space flight, which is provided by SpaceX, is around 418 crore rupees because it goes into the orbital and it costs much more. What if you want to simulate weightlessness of space without going into space? You can use a 0G plane. The 0G plane uses a parabolic flight to simulate 0G, zero gravity. Have you ever felt weightlessness when you are going down an elevator or a roller coaster ride? The 0Z plane also uses the same physics to simulate weightlessness. So this is a typical flight profile of a 0G flight. Approximately 22 seconds you can feel weightlessness, and its weightlessness is felt near the peak region, and experiences in the flight lasts for a few minutes by performing around 10 to 15 such cycles. Apart from entertainment purpose, 0G flights are also used to study the microgravity effects on chemicals, physical and biological phenomena. Starship is the tallest and heaviest rocket that has been built with SpaceX, aiming for it to be fully reusable with a low operational cost. And once it becomes operational, common people will be able to get access to space at a very cheaper rate. And let us hope that it comes to life soon. Another cheap option to experience near space and see Earth's curvature without spending a lot of money is the worldview. Each flight carries 8 participants and 2 trained crew members in a zero pressure stratospheric balloon, which reaches up to a height of around 100,000 feet above Earth. When we talk about space tourism, we all think about having a good time. So many organizations worldwide thought of building a space hotel where people can visit, stay, and leave, as we do in an Earth resort. Many design models were discussed across various space industries to implement in the early 2000. Galactic Suite Space Resort, Space Industries, Space Islands were some of the projects which were cancelled. The main problem with this project was the lack of advanced technology for delivering the modules to the right orbit and integration in a short period. Continuous life support system was another major problem with these ideas. Recently, Voyager station has been planned to start by 2027, As a sole entity, it cannot build and operate the space resort, so it needs collaborations from worldwide for smooth flow and outflow of customers. If everything works as planned, it will be the first space resort to open to public. They plan to accommodate around 280 guests and 112 crew staffs in the Voyager space station's space resort. The Voyager provides artificial gravity on board to the humans by the spin of a wheel-shaped space habitat resort module. The guests will be offered conventional frozen sealed food similar to astronauts' food in ISS. Soon, we will also have Moon and Mars colony, which we will be able to travel and stay for recreational purpose. So let us talk about some of the Indian space tourists. Shrisha Bandla is an Indian-born American astronaut and an astronautical engineer. She is the vice president in research operations of Virgin Galactic, and in 2021, 11th July, she flew the Virgin Galactic Unity 22 test flight along the Richard Branson. Apart from her, Santosh George Kulagda is an Indian publisher, entrepreneur, and a media person who is also planning to become the first Indian space tourist and fly on a Virgin Galactic flight. ISRO has already sent its first astronaut, Rakesh Sharma, to space in a joint Indo-Soviet program. Now ISRO is gearing up for Gaganyaan, where Indian astronauts will be launched from Indian soil using Indian technology. The technical expertise of Gaganyaan mission will enable new opportunities in space tourism in India. Thank you very much.